How many deer have you spooked with your boots before you ever sat down in your stand? The walk-in is the problem. Every step you take on the way to your tree leaves a scent print on the ground that lasts 6 to 8 hours in cool conditions. And deer don't just detect it, they follow it. A whitetail's interdigital gland, that's the scent organ between their hooves, tells them exactly which direction another animal was traveling. Their nose reads your boot trail the same way. They know where you came from, where you went, and how recently you were there. Your camo, your wind direction, your scent-free laundry detergent. None of that matters if the trail to your stand is a glowing neon highway of human odor stamped into the dirt every 30 inches. The fix is sitting in your spice cabinet. Anise extract. $2 and change at any grocery store. A few drops on each boot sole before your walk-in, and you're not just covering your scent. You're replacing it with something that triggers a completely different response in the deer's brain. I'll explain why in a minute, because the science behind this is what sold me on it permanently. I first read about this in a 1987 issue of Outdoor Life, buried in a sidebar about old-timer scent tricks. Thought it sounded ridiculous. Then I tried it during bow season on a lease in Anise County, Iowa, more out of curiosity than anything else. The first morning I used it, I had a doe walk my entry trail, nose to the ground, directly past my stand at 15 yards. She wasn't spooked. She was investigating. That had never happened before. Over the next 2 seasons, I ran a comparison between Anise-treated walks and my usual routine of spraying down with dead downwind. The difference in deer behavior on my entry trail was significant enough that I stopped buying scent eliminator sprays entirely. We're going to break down Anise extract against commercial scent products, what the trail camera data actually showed, and exactly how to apply it so you can test it yourself this season. And stay with me until the end, because there's a modification to this technique that turns a good trick into something an outfitter in southern Iowa charges his clients extra for, and it takes about 30 seconds at the trailhead. You need to understand one thing first, and this is the idea that changed how I approach every single hunt. Most scent control focuses on elimination. Spray this, wash with that, wear activated carbon. The goal is to make yourself invisible to the deer's nose. But a whitetail has roughly 297 million olfactory receptors, about 60 times what you and I have. You're not making yourself invisible. You're turning the volume down from a scream to a loud conversation. The deer still hears it. What Anise does is different. It doesn't try to erase your scent. It overwrites it. And the way it overwrites it matters because it targets a specific channel in the deer's olfactory system. A whitetail processes scent through 2 response pathways. One is the alarm channel, which handles predator scent, human odor, and anything the deer associates with danger. When this channel fires, the deer's first instinct is to freeze, flag, and bolt. The other is the curiosity channel, which handles novel, non-threatening odors. Food sources, other animals, plant compounds the deer hasn't encountered before. When this channel fires, the deer approaches, nose down, ears forward, cautious but moving toward the scent. Anise extract contains anethole, a volatile organic compound that hits the curiosity channel hard. It doesn't smell like a predator. It doesn't smell like a human. It smells like something the deer's brain can't categorize, which triggers investigation rather than flight. When you put it on your boot soles, every step you take lays down an anethole signature on top of your human scent print. The deer encounters both signals at the same location, but because the curiosity channel and the alarm channel compete for processing priority, and anethole is a strong curiosity trigger, the investigation response tends to override the flight response. The deer follows the trail instead of running from it. Think about that for a second. You've been spending $15 to $20 a can trying to erase a trail that a deer can still detect anyway. For $2, you can lay down a trail that deer actively want to follow. You've had this morning. You walk in before light, take every precaution, spray your boots, check the wind. You get settled and nothing shows. Then around 9 a.m., you climb down, walk out, and jump 3 deer off your entry trail on the way back to the truck. They were there the whole time. They just wouldn't cross your scent line. That's not a wind problem. That's a boot trail problem. And it means every deer that approached from that direction either detoured around your trail or turned back entirely, and you never saw any of them. I ran a comparison over 2 full seasons on the same 160-acre lease in Anise County, Iowa. Same stands, same hunter, same conditions as closely as I could match them. On untreated mornings, I walked in with Dead Downwind boot spray, about $16 a can. On treated mornings, I put 4 drops of McCormick Anise extract on each boot sole before leaving the truck, roughly a dime-sized puddle about the size of a shirt button. I tracked 2 things: total deer sightings per sit, and the closest distance any deer approached my entry trail. Over 34 sites, the untreated mornings averaged 2.1 deer sightings with an average closest approach to my entry trail of about 45 yards. The treated mornings averaged 3.8 sightings with an average closest approach of 12 yards. On 6 separate occasions with Anise, a deer actually walked my boot trail nose down for 20 yards or more before veering off toward its original destination. That behavior never happened once on an untreated morning, not once in 34 sites. A hunting buddy of mine, skeptical as they come, ran the same experiment on his property across the line in Adams County, Illinois. Pike County gets all the attention in western Illinois, but Adams County holds comparable deer numbers with a fraction of the pressure. He sat a lone wolf hang-on stand. That's a lightweight platform you bolt to the tree with a fixed seat, over a trail intersection for 3 weeks in late October. First week untreated, second week Anise, third week nose jammer, which is a commercial product that uses vanillin and other compounds to overwhelm the deer's nose. The Anise week produced the most sightings inside 30 yards, about the length of a school bus. Nose jammer came second. The untreated week came last by a wide margin. What made his test more interesting than mine is that he ran a stealth cam on his entry trail the entire 3 weeks, aimed at a creek crossing where his boot trail passed through soft mud. The photos told the story better than any sighting log. During the untreated week, deer crossed his boot trail perpendicular, at a trot, heads up, and the camera caught them mid-stride, clearly moving through the area as fast as possible. Anise week? The camera caught does and fawns lingering at the trail, nose to the ground, some standing there for 15 to 20 seconds before continuing. 1 yearling buck circled back twice. That's curiosity behavior, not avoidance behavior. And seeing it captured on camera is what finally convinced him to stop spraying his boots and start treating them. I want to be honest about something. I have no peer-reviewed study that proves anethally specifically triggers a curiosity over alarm response in whitetails. The dual-channel olfactory theory comes from general mammalian research, and I'm applying it to deer behavior based on what I've observed and what the camera data shows. A biologist might tell me I'm oversimplifying it. That's fair. But the practical results, deer investigating my boot trail instead of blowing off it, are consistent enough across 2 states, multiple properties, and 3 years of testing that I'm confident the mechanism is real, even if my terminology isn't perfectly academic. If you're curious about the difference between anise extract and anise oil, which you'll sometimes find at health food stores or online, it matters. Pure anise oil is concentrated about 10 times stronger than extract by volume. A single drop of oil equals roughly 10 drops of extract. If you use oil, 1 drop per boot, not 4. I prefer the extract because it's easier to control the dosage, cheaper, and available at every grocery store in America. The oil works, but it's easier to overdo it, and overdoing it is exactly what you don't want. If you're enjoying this so far, subscribe. We've got more of these coming. Application matters more than you'd think, and this is where most guys mess up the first time they try it. You're not applying anise to your body, your clothes, or your gear, only your boot soles. The reason is precision. You want the scent trail on the ground where the deer encounter it naturally, not floating in the air column where it mixes with everything else and loses its directional quality. A deer following an anise trail on the ground gets a clear signal. Anise drifting through the air at chest height just becomes noise. 4 drops per boot. That's roughly a 1/4 teaspoon total, about the volume of a large raindrop. Put it on the rubber sole, not the leather or fabric upper. The rubber holds the compound longer and transfers it to the ground more evenly with each step. Apply at the truck, not at camp or at home. Anise is volatile and begins evaporating immediately. You want peak concentration during your walk, not 2 hours before it. Carry the bottle in a Ziploc bag to prevent cross-contamination with your gear. Walk your normal entry route. The anise will deposit with each footstep automatically. The trail remains detectable to deer for roughly 4 to 6 hours in temperatures between 30 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough that your breath is visible but warm enough that the compound still volatilizes off the ground. In warmer conditions above 60 degrees, it evaporates faster and you get maybe 2 to 3 hours of effectiveness. In extreme cold below 20 degrees, the volatility drops and the scent barely lifts off the soil. That 30 to 55 range is the sweet spot, and it happens to overlap perfectly with peak deer movement in October and November across most of the Midwest. One mistake I made early on was applying too much. More is not better with anise. At 8 drops or above per boot, the concentration becomes so strong that it stops triggering curiosity and starts triggering caution. A deer's nose can detect compounds at 1 part per billion in ideal conditions. A subtle anise trail says interesting, investigate. A heavy anise trail says something is wrong here. I learned this after 2 mornings where I doubled the dose and saw deer approach my trail, stop, then circle wide around it instead of following it. Back down to 4 drops and the follow-along behavior returned. Actually, 3 drops works fine too on cold mornings when evaporation is slower. But 4 is my default and it's been consistent across hundreds of sites. Where this really shines is during the pre-rut, roughly early to mid-October in Iowa and Illinois. Bucks are on their feet more, starting to establish scrape lines, which are series of pawed-up dirt patches where they leave scent as territorial markers, and cruising wider circuits than usual. A curious scent trail that crosses their travel pattern gives them a reason to deviate. And during the pre-rut, their curiosity tolerance is higher than any other time of year. I've had bucks follow an anise trail for 40 yards, roughly the distance from home plate to the pitcher's mound, before losing interest. During peak rut in early November, the results are mixed. Bucks are so locked onto DO estrus scent, that's the pheromone does release when they're ready to breed, that anise becomes background noise. It still helps with does and younger bucks, but mature rutting bucks mostly ignore it. They've got one thing on their mind during peak rut, and a licorice-scented boot trail doesn't register. Late season, December and January, is where anise earns its keep again, but for a different reason. Deer in late season are moving to food sources, standing corn, winter food plots, oak ridges with remaining acorns, and they're moving with purpose. They don't linger. Your boot trail crossing between a bedding area and a food source becomes the single biggest obstacle to getting deer past your stand. An anise-treated trail in late season doesn't trigger the same curious following behavior you see in October. but it does eliminate the hard avoidance. Deer cross the trail instead of detouring 80 yards around it, which is all you need when your stand is hanging over the only trail between the bed and the bean field. There is one condition where this falls apart completely, and it's not what you'd expect. Fog. Specifically thick morning fog or any kind of temperature inversion where cold air is trapped under a layer of warmer air. In those conditions, scent doesn't rise and disperse normally. It pools near the ground and spreads laterally. Your Anise trail, which is designed to be a narrow ground-level signal, suddenly becomes a diffuse cloud that fills the area. Deer walk into a wall of Anise at nose height instead of encountering a subtle trail at hoof level, and the response flips from curiosity to alarm. I've had 2 foggy mornings where deer blew at distances I'd never seen, 80 yards or more, and I'm convinced the pooled Anise was the reason. On foggy mornings, skip it. Hunt clean. Save the Anise for clear mornings when scent behaves predictably. The cost comparison is almost embarrassing for the industry. A 2-ounce bottle of McCormick Pure Anise extract runs about $2.50. At 4 drops per boot per morning, that bottle lasts roughly 40 to 45 hunts. A single season for most guys. Dead Down Winfield spray costs about $8 for a 12-ounce can and lasts maybe 10 to 12 hunts if you're conservative with it. ScentLock's spray products run $12 to $15 and cover about the same number of trips. Nose Jammer is around $10 per can. Code Blue's boot pad system costs about $20 for a starter kit, and the replacement pads add up fast. Over a decade of hunting, even at just 25 sits per season, you'd spend somewhere between $200 and $400 on boot spray alone with commercial products. The same decade of Anise costs you roughly $25 total, and the commercial sprays are fighting a losing battle against 297 million olfactory receptors. They're trying to erase something that can't be erased. Anise doesn't try. It just writes a better story on top of yours. My wallet figured this one out faster than my ego did. An outfitter in Wayne County, Iowa, a guy who runs about 40 clients through his properties every fall, started tracking this 5 years ago. He split his clients into 2 groups. One group used their own scent elimination routine, whatever they brought from home. The other group followed his protocol, which included Anise on boot soles. Over 5 seasons and roughly 200 guided hunts per group, the Anise group averaged 22% more deer sightings inside 40 yards and, this is the number that matters, a 31% higher shot opportunity rate. Same properties, same time windows, same stand locations, different boot treatment. This is the part that changed everything for me, and it's what the outfitter in Wayne County figured out before anyone else I know. Instead of just dabbing Anise on your boots and walking in, tie a cotton drag rope to your boot, roughly 3 feet long, about waist height on a kid, and soak the last 6 inches of it in Anise extract. Drag it behind you for the final 40 yards of your approach, the stretch closest to your stand. What this does is lay down a continuous scent line instead of intermittent boot prints. The rope touches the ground constantly, depositing a smooth trail that reads to the deer's nose like a travel path rather than individual footsteps. On trail cameras, the behavior difference is stark. With boot-only Anise, deer follow the trail in short bursts, nose down, then head up, then nose down again. With the drag rope, they commit to the trail and walk it continuously, head low, moving steady. It turns your entry route into a funnel. That's a narrow path that channels deer movement in a specific direction. And if you angle the last 40 yards to cross through your shooting lane, you're pulling deer right past your stand on a string. A 6-foot piece of cotton clothesline costs $1. Cut it in half, tie one end to your bootlace, dunk the other end in Anise at the truck. Walk your last 40 yards, untie it, stuff it in a Ziploc, and climb up. 30 seconds of setup. A Reckonix trail camera I ran on my entry trail last October showed that deer followed the rope trail at an average distance of 8 yards from the tree, well inside bow range, compared to 18 yards for boot-only Anise mornings. Same trail, same stand, same month. That covers the boot treatment. Next time we're getting into something I've been testing for 2 seasons that most people don't think about at all, which is how thermals change the way deer interact with any scent trail depending on the time of day. Morning hunts and evening hunts require completely different approaches, and the reason has nothing to do with wind direction. See you then.